Thanks for downloading this edition of Yesterday in Parliament. I'm Susan Hume. On Wednesday, the 28th of February, Theresa May told MPs that no UK Prime Minister would ever accept an EU proposal which would place a border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. Trying to solve the problem of taking the UK out of the EU customs union while still avoiding checks on the Irish border seems harder than puzzling out a Rubik's Cube. But the DUP's Sammy Wilson loathed the solution the EU had come up with, aligning Northern Ireland with the Republic rather than with the rest of the UK.
Will the Prime Minister confirm that she will never agree to any trade borders between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom?
And Theresa May shot down the very idea, saying it
would, if implemented, undermine the UK common market and threaten constitutional integrity of the UK by creating a customs and regulatory border down the Irish Sea. And no UK Prime Minister could ever agree to it.
But no one's keen on the idea either of a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, with its echoes of the past and the Troubles. A few seats away sat the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, who, in a leaked memo to Mrs May, had seemed to entertain the idea that Brexit could in the end lead to a hard border. So how come Boris Johnson was even thinking about it, wondered Jeremy Corbyn.
In a leaked letter to the Prime Minister, he wrote, even if a hard border is reintroduced, we would expect to see 95% plus of goods pass. He's shouting at the moment, he's obviously mixing up the border with the Camden-Islington border.
Boris Johnson had been heckling and brandishing a rolled-up bundle of papers at Mr Corbyn. The Labour leader pressed on.
Mr Speaker, can the Prime Minister confirm that she will not renege on commitments made in Phase 1 to keep an open border in Ireland?
The Prime Minister felt she'd been perfectly clear.
The Foreign Secretary and I are absolutely committed to ensuring that we deliver on no hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. That's the position of the UK government, it's the position of the parties in Northern Ireland, it's the position of the Irish government, and it was what we agreed in the December agreement of that joint report.
So what did the Foreign Secretary himself have to say? Well, Labour had asked for an urgent statement from him straight after Mrs May's question time. But as that finished, Boris Johnson hopped up out of his seat and made to leave the chamber. Labour MPs squealed and pointed. Boris Johnson, looking vaguely alarmed, sat down briefly and then set off again out of the chamber. It turned out that the ultimate safe pair of hands, the Cabinet Office Minister David Lidington, was going to make the statement instead. The SNP's Stephen Gethins was a little disappointed.
I enjoy a game of Where's Wally as much as the next person, but frankly, it's astonishing the Foreign Secretary isn't here.
And the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Labour's Emily Thornberry, was disgusted.
I have to say, it is an absolute disgrace and a huge discourtesy to this House that the Foreign Secretary is not here himself to answer the questions of his memo.
The memo, she said, revealed that Boris Johnson accepted there would have to be changes along the Irish border.
He accepts that there will need to be border controls that do not exist at present. The only debate is their degree of hardness. But surely the Foreign Secretary has learned by now that you can't just be a little bit pregnant. Either there is a border or there is not.
David Lidington insisted that the government was committed to no hard borders and it would all be sorted out in the EU negotiations.
The Prime Minister and the Taoiseach have both said publicly that they believe that the priority is to settle these issues in the context of the ambitious, deep and special partnership that we are seeking between the United Kingdom and the European Union.
The DUP Westminster leader Nigel Dodds felt the row had been got up by people who didn't want to leave the EU at all.
to use the peace process as an excuse to either thwart Brexit or to shape it in the way some people want is, quite frankly, outrageous and disgraceful.
And a Conservative, Philip Hollobone, was also aghast at the EU's legal text suggesting the border should not be in the fields and hedgerows of Ireland, but in the Irish Sea between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK.
Dare the EU propose the break-up of the United Kingdom into two separate trading zones? 61% of my constituents in Kettering voted to leave, but both Leavers and Remainers are increasingly angered by the stroppy, petulant and unreasonable approach to these negotiations by the European Union.
David Lidington said that with a political will from both London and the EU, he believed a deal could be reached. And it's the 20th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement next month, something that may well concentrate minds. Thanks for listening, and a longer version of Yesterday in Parliament with lots more news from Westminster is available from the Radio 4 website.